Welcome to Naturally par José, a podcast on health and well-being. I'm your host, José Fortin. Today, we're going to discover the microorganisms that inhabit us and with which we should be living in harmony. We will see their role in our health and the importance of keeping them in homeostasis. The microbiome is a community of microorganisms such as bacteria, fungi, and viruses that live in different parts of our body, such as our digestive system, urinary system, reproductive system, respiratory system, and on our skin. These microorganisms are found on external surfaces or in cavities that have access to the outside but never penetrate past the membrane into the bloodstream. The barriers that usually prevent microorganisms from entering the body are the membranes of the digestive, vaginal, urinary, and respiratory tracts, as well as the skin. They form an envelope that isolate the interior of our body from foreign organisms. Our immune system ensures the elimination of any microorganisms that could succeed in passing through these membranes. In a healthy human body, there are as many microbes as there are cells. There are over 1,000 different species of microorganisms that have been identified in the human body, but not all of these microorganisms are necessarily beneficial to us. Some are found in the intestine when the body is out of balance, while others will be present if the body is in homeostasis. The microbiome diversity is essential for maintaining good health, and most humans have about 160 species of bacteria in their digestive tract at any time. Before birth, there is very few microorganisms in our gut. A vaginal birth strongly contributes to the establishment of our different microbiomes. Babies receive bacteria from their mothers during birth, but if the maternal microbiota is unbalanced, the implantation can be more difficult. A cesarean birth completely skips this step, and the implantation of the microorganism must occur through skin-to-skin contact or through breastfeeding only. If the baby is bottle fed instead of breastfed, the implantation of the microbiota is further impacted and the variety of microorganisms implanted may be quite diminished. The main composition of the microbiota is usually established in the first 2 years of life. A symbiotic interaction should exist between our microbiota and us. We should mutually benefit from our association. Our role is to offer these bacteria a stable environment and a constant food source, while in exchange they play very important roles in our well-being, and I would even say our survival. Let's start by examining our role in this symbiotic relationship. First, we provide our microbiome with the nourishment it needs to survive. The beneficial bacteria we find in our bowels feed primarily on dietary fiber, which we cannot digest because we lack the enzymes necessary for this. For us, eating a diet rich in fiber is known to help keep our bowels regular, and they act like a broom that helps eliminate toxins. However, for the beneficial bacteria in our bowels, they are the main source of food. Second, we offer them the possibility of maintaining an environment with a stable pH to ensure their proper functioning, which is also very important since the shape of the protein and enzyme depend on the pH in which they evolve. I will explain this a little bit more in detail. If we look at the biochemical aspect of it all, proteins are molecules composed of amino acids. There are 20 different kinds of amino acid that can be combined together in a huge variety of combinations to make all kinds of molecules with very specific shapes. The shape of the protein will depend on the order in which the amino acids are attached together, as well as the pH in which they evolve. Protein can have a structural role, be a source of energy for our body, have a transportation role, be an important component of our hormones or our immune system, but mainly they are our unique source of enzymes. Enzymes are a category of proteins whose role is to accelerate and ensure the transformation of other molecules into specific substances. They can either break bonds and cut molecules in two, or create new bonds to combine molecules. This is very important because it modifies the role and functioning of those molecules in our body. pH is a way of measuring how acidic or alkaline a specific environment is. A pH of 7 is a neutral pH, which is considered neither acidic nor alkaline. The more the pH decreases and moves toward 1, the more acidic the environment is, and the acidity level increases exponentially for each whole number decrease. On the other hand, the more the pH increases above 7, up to a maximum of 14, the more alkaline the environment becomes, and again, the increase is exponential for each whole number increase. The shape of proteins depend on the degree of acidity or alkalinity of the environment in which they exist. The more acidic the pH, the more the molecule will expand, leaving more space between the amino acid that compose it, which modifies its configuration. The molecules become larger, but there is also a twisting movement which further affects the shape of the enzyme or the protein. If the opposite happens and the pH becomes more alkaline, the molecule tightens and there is less space between the amino acids. And again, when the pH changes, the molecule will change shape. The substrate is the name of the substance transformed by enzymes. The enzyme and substrate work like keys in the lock. The more the shape of the enzyme is modified, the more difficult it is to interact with the substrate it must modify. It's a bit like a key whose teeth are not perfectly aligned. It has much more difficulty functioning and opening doors. If the teeth are too misaligned, it no longer works at all. For the enzymes, if the pH is slightly changed, its shape changes a little bit. The substrate has more difficulty attaching to the enzyme, and the reaction takes longer to be accomplished. If the enzyme changes shape too much, the substrate can no longer attach tightly enough to the molecule for the chemical reaction to take place, and it becomes ineffective. So it is very important to keep a stable pH environment to ensure the proper functioning of enzymes and proteins in general. Bacteria also need a stable pH so that their enzymes and protein can function optimally. Depending on the region of the body where they live, this optimal pH is not the same for all bacteria. To function properly, the bacteria in our mouth do not necessarily need the same pH as those found in our bowels, in our bladder, on our skin, in our lungs, or in a woman's vaginal tract. Here, it's important to make some interesting observations. The optimal pH for bacteria beneficial to humans tend to be the same as the optimal pH for enzymes produced by the body in that region. The body tends to be healthier and function better when these bacteria are present, since they work in harmony with the already established balance in the human body, which implies that there was a process of natural selection that took place. Bacteria and humans who have a pH level that are in harmony result in bodies that are more resistant to disease and provide a better chance of survival. Another observation to make is that the most harmful microorganisms for the body tend to have an optimal pH different from the region in which they are usually thriving. In general, microorganisms secrete substances that contribute to maintain their optimal pH. For example, the good bacteria that lives in harmony in our colon tend to secrete lactic acid, which helps maintain the pH of the bowels at a level beneficial for them and for us. While harmful fungi, such as Candida albicans, tend to secrete ammonia, which greatly unbalance the optimal pH for the colon. Since the pH is no longer ideal for this region of the body, the latter cannot defend itself as well against invaders. It is like a prisoner who is starving. He has less energy to defend himself and becomes lethargic. Once the pH of the colon becomes more alkaline, Candida becomes more vigorous and can form projections. It's like many tentacles that allow it to attach to the intestinal walls and make it more difficult to dislodge. When Candida cells die after a short lifespan and are replaced by other Candida cells, the breakdown of the projections leaves small openings in the intestinal wall, while molecules that are not completely digested can enter the body. We then find ourselves with a leaky gut problem. If small pieces of proteins enter the bloodstream, they can promote the development of food intolerances or allergies. The immune system perceives them as invaders that must be eliminated. An imbalance in pH promote the development of harmful microorganisms, which can have quite serious consequences on our health. In summary, in this symbiotic relationship, humans offer food to all these microorganisms as well as the possibility for an environment favorable to their multiplication. Keeping these environments in homeostasis is then very important for a healthy microbiota, which can then be beneficial for us instead of being harmful and cause health issues. Now let's look at what these microorganisms can give us in exchange. We already know that the microbiome helps us in a multiple of ways, but we are still discovering this mysterious universe. We learn new aspects of it all the time, and because of its great variety, we will be making new discovery for a long time to come. The roles that all of these microorganisms have on our body are as varied as the number of different bacteria, fungus, and viruses that compose it. The intestinal microbiome is the more studied, and we can start with this one, but we will also see what is known about the role of other microsystems that exist in our body. So the first role that has been associated with a healthy gut microbiome is a protective role. It is our first line of defense against pathogens, which are also known as harmful microorganisms. Bacteria that live in symbiosis with us can eliminate the majority of invading pathogens even before the immune system gets involved. The good bacteria that inhabit our gut are also a very important source of short-chain fatty acids, substances that act on our body in a multiple of very interesting ways. There are three main types, including acetate, which makes up for 60% of the shorty fatty acids, as well as propionate and butyrate, which each make up for about 20%. There are traces of other metabolites, such as lactate isomers, valerate, isobutyrate, and isovalerate, but their role and interactions have not been studied as much for the moment. Butyrate, in particular, has been the subject of many studies, and it is very interesting in this protective role. The most recent studies show that a microbiome that produces a lot of butyrate helps promote the growth of good bacteria, helps eliminate harmful microorganisms, has a modulating effect on several immune functions, helps protect the integrity of the intestinal mucosa, helps reduce acute and chronic inflammation during inflammatory bowel disease, and may even have a protective effect against intestinal cancer. Another role associated with our intestinal microbiome is that of assimilation and production of nutrients important to health. Microorganisms in our digestive system contain approximately 3 million genes, which is about 150 times more than what we find in the human body cells, which means that we benefit from the presence of many more kind of enzymes without having to produce them, since these microorganisms in our gut produce them for us instead. This gives us access to possibilities that would not exist without all of this. We can then get more from our food and have a very different access to the different nutrients that makes it up. An intestinal microbiome that contains a good variety of bacteria and produce significant amount of short-chain fatty acids can become an interesting source of vitamin K, as well as a source of all the B complex vitamins. The microbiome also increases the assimilation of vitamin D, which helps with bone, immune, and nervous system health. The microbiome also has a significant impact on the metabolism of minerals since it acts at two different levels. It directly influences the gastrointestinal assimilation of minerals by stimulating the absorption by the intestinal walls, and it produces a range of enzymes unique to bacteria, the phytase, which help release minerals from food plants. Fiber fermentation also releases hydrogen, which allows for better oxidation of organic substances and increases energy production through the process of digestion in an anaerobic environment such as the bowels. The fermentation process also helps make several amino acids such as phenylalanine, tyrosine, and tryptophan easier for the body to assimilate and use. A diet rich in L-glutamate also helps bacteria regulate the metabolism of arginine, serine, and aspartate. This also generally reduces the catabolism, which means the elimination of amino acid, both essential and non-essential amino acids, which has a positive impact on production of proteins, enzymes, and neurotransmitters. Several studies demonstrate that an intestinal microbiome in homeostasis allows the regulation of several physiological pathways with the nervous system, with a potential impact on several diseases such as depression, schizophrenia, and Alzheimer's disease. It helps control systemic and nerves inflammation, which help modulate emotions, cognition, and mental disorders. It may also stimulate the production of an enzyme that promotes serotonin production and may have a positive effect on the integrity of the blood-brain barrier, which helps protect the brain. This all shows that the microbiome has a direct effect on the functions of our nervous system. Finally, a high concentration of short fatty acid in the intestine helps to regulate several metabolic pathways, which helps to improve several metabolic problems such as high blood pressure, an imbalance in cholesterol metabolism, type 2 diabetes, as well as obesity. Butyrate appears to help reduce high blood pressure through vasodilation and helps reduce the inflammation that cause plaque buildup and the hardening of arteries, improving the health of our cardiovascular system. Acetate would help establish homeostasis of cholesterol metabolism. Cholesterol is a very important element in the production of many hormones, but it is when it sticks to the arteries that we end up with serious problems. Keeping it in balance is particularly important for health. In case of obesity, acetate can help reduce body mass, modulate glucose and lipid metabolism, as well as reduce appetite by acting directly on the secretion of satiety hormones in the brain. Type 2 diabetes is associated with a decrease in concentration of butyrate in the intestine. This is not an exclusive list of the impact that a balanced gut microbiome has on our health. We still have a lot of discoveries to do, and there are probably more roles we do not know about. What about the other microbiomes? Only recently has urinary sterility been questioned and a urinary microbiome identified. They used to think that there was no bacteria in our urinary tract unless you had a urinary tract infection. But it is not the case. Culture methods were insufficient and did not make it possible to detect the anaerobic or slow-growing bacteria that compose the urinary microbiome. Just like the intestinal microbiome, the urinary microbiome also exerts a protective effect on the bladder and inhibits the growth and adhesion of bacteria that can cause urinary problems, such as urinary tract infections, and emergency urinary incontinence, painful bladder syndrome, and interstitial cystitis. Again, our knowledge of its role is very limited, and there are probably surprises awaiting us. The vaginal microbiome in women and the gut microbiome in both sexes can influence reproductive health and conception successes. They influence the quality of oocytes, sperm motility, and the receptivity of the uterus to conception. The production of lactic acid by the vaginal microbiome helps maintain an acidic environment, protecting against infections and promoting fertilization and embryo implantation. An unbalanced vaginal and intestinal microbiomes increases the risk of bacterial and fungal vaginosis. It even seems that it would have an impact on the risk of contracting HIV. They may also reduce fertility by increasing the risk of a chronic inflammation condition that can cause hostile immune response to sperm. It is even thought that an unbalanced vaginal microbiome could potentially impact the development of conditions such as polycystic ovarian syndrome as well as endometriosis. In case of the lung microbiome, it is again a situation where we have long believed in the sterility of the lungs and we have resisted the idea of a healthy lung microbiome. We know very little about it, but here is some interesting information. It seems that the lung microbiome takes hold much more quickly after birth than the intestinal microbiome. We can already detect the presence of beneficial bacteria in the lungs within 24 hours of birth, and the lung microbiome is established in a few months instead of years, as it is the case for the intestinal microbiome. In very premature babies suffering from bronchodysplasia, significant pulmonary dysbiosis is observed in adulthood. That means their lungs microorganisms are really out of balance. This suggests that gestational age, mode of delivery, and the 2 first months of life are crucial in the constitution of the pulmonary microbiota. For now, we can summarize what we know about this microsystem in 3 points. The lungs have a low bacteria density compared to other microbiomes. The bacteria density present a high biodiversity, which could explain its significant capacity for resilience. And it presents a large abundance of strict anaerobic bacteria, which would have a role in educating the immune system and would help to induce tolerance to allergen and reduce the risk of developing allergic asthma. The gut microbiome appears to be able to exchange bacteria with the respiratory system and have a direct impact on its health. However, we still have a lot to learn about it, and great discoveries are still possible. The skin microbiome varies depending on the area of the skin where it is located. Dry areas will not have the same composition of bacteria and microorganisms as wet or oily areas. It is a microbiome that tends to be relatively stable over time. Some research indicate that the microorganism that compose it helps break down fats in the skin, which help produce natural moisturizing factors. An imbalance in the microbiome is often associated with skin disorders such as acne, atopic dermatitis, psoriasis, seborrheic dermatitis, rosacea, and even skin cancer. The microbiota also plays an important role in wound healing and body odors. So, in short, our body is inhabited by a multitude of microorganisms that works in synergy with us to help maintain the homeostasis of our body. We have seen all the roles that could have been assigned to them in terms of our health so far. However, it is still a world about which we are far from knowing everything and which could bring us very interesting surprises. In our next episode, we will find out how to maintain a good balance in all of this. The microbiome that inhabits us is dynamic and can be modified by a wide range of factors, such as our diet, the body care products we use, our lifestyle, taking medications, and particularly a change in pH. These changes can be the cause of the appearance of several health problems. We will see what tools are at our disposal to help achieve homeostasis, but also the prevention methods that can be used to minimize the risk of causing imbalance in the composition of our microbiomes. Important note, any information contained in this podcast is not intended to replace your doctor's recommendations. If you have health conditions or are taking medication, it is important to consult your doctor to ensure that you can make the changes you wish to make without interfering with your medical treatment or medications you are currently taking. Thank you for listening to the entire episode. If you like my content, please follow me or subscribe to the platform you use. You can also enable the notification bell to be notified when I upload a new episode, which will be every second Tuesday in the morning. Thank you for listening, and I wish you a nice day.